Councillors. I call on Nicola Sturgeon.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My statement today relates to the report of the external review conducted by PwC of NHS Lothian's waiting times management. I was briefed on the key findings of this review at the end of last week and received the full report yesterday. I've made it available to NHS Lothian and placed it in Spice this morning. This report details practices that are completely unacceptable, and I thought it important to make a statement to Parliament at the earliest opportunity. In my statement today, I will remind members of the background to the report, summarise its key findings and set out my reaction to it and the instructions I've given as a result. Members will recall reports last October about NHS Lothian patients being offered treatment in England at short notice and in some cases with only one appointment date being offered. When patients subsequently and understandably refused to travel to England, they were recorded as unavailable and as a result did not appear in NHS Lothian's published waiting time figures as breaching waiting time guarantees. I was clear that this situation did not comply with the new way's waiting times guidance. At my request, the Chief Executive of NHS Lothian initiated an investigation and the subsequent report by the Board's Waiting Times Management Group was submitted to me and then shared with Parliament on the 9th of January. The Board's initial investigation concluded that this practice had not been used intentionally to manipulate waiting times. NHS Lothian also provided an assurance that patients were no longer being offered treatment in England and that arrangements had been put in place to ensure that all patients would be treated swiftly. However, the report also made reference to certain administrative practices in the management of waiting times that I considered needed further investigation. On the 6th of January, my officials on my behalf asked that the Board carry out an audit of its waiting times practices and management. In response, the Chair of NHS Lothian decided to commission an external audit and on the 31st of January appointed PwC to conduct it. After further reflection and mindful of the potential seriousness of the issues involved, I decided that it was appropriate for this review to be instructed completely independently of NHS Lothian. The Chair was advised on the 25th of February that in the interests of appropriate corporate governance and to ensure the independence of the findings, my officials would commission the report and that it would come to me in the first instance. The key finding of the PwC report, which examined the period from April to December 2011, is that NHS Lothian has been applying periods of unavailability to some patients inappropriately in order to artificially reduce the numbers of patients who would be otherwise reported as breaching waiting time guarantees. This had, in the main, been done by retrospectively adjusting the patient's waiting time record. Let me say at this stage that the vast majority of the almost 1 million episodes of patient care that NHS Lothian deals with in a year proceed through the system quickly, smoothly and without undue delay. Furthermore, not all NHS Lothian patients who have had a period of unavailability applied will have been inappropriately recorded in this way. It's also the case that in NHS Lothian, as in Scotland as a whole, the clear majority of patients are treated within waiting time targets, irrespective of whether or not they are unavailable for a period of time. However, the report makes clear that the NHS Lothian practices under review will have masked the numbers of patients breaching guarantees and resulting in certain patient journeys being longer than they should have been. Now, it is not possible to exactly quantify the number of patients wrongly coded as unavailable without a detailed examination of every single patient record. However, Presiding Officer, I am very clear that any instance of a patient being inappropriately coded as unavailable, or indeed any practice that seeks to manipulate waiting times, is completely and utterly unacceptable. My reaction to this report is one of disappointment and considerable anger. Waiting times guarantees matter. Patients value them and staff work really hard to deliver them. I will not tolerate manipulation of them. So let me make clear what will happen now. Firstly, it is clear that the practices identified in this report could constitute serious misconduct on the part of certain staff members, and NHS Lothian has already instigated disciplinary proceedings. Members will appreciate that it would not be appropriate for me to comment further on that at this stage. However, the Chair and the non-executive members of NHS Lothian Board are appointed by me to provide scrutiny and appropriate governance. Therefore, a central question that I required the report to address was whether the Board could reasonably have identified this problem earlier and acted to put it right. On that point, the report finds that the board was not presented with a sufficiently comprehensive picture of waiting times to have identified that there was an issue. It is also, in my view, to the credit of the chair of the board that when concerns did begin to surface, he made the decision to commission an external audit. However, today, as well as instructing the chair to urgently consider and respond to all of the findings in the report, I have specifically asked him to review the scope of information the board receives at its meetings, learning from good practice in other boards, and to report to me within a fortnight on how he intends to ensure the highest standards of governance in future. Presiding Officer, the other significant issue of very serious concern to me is the suggestion in the report that the management culture in NHS Lothian contributed to this situation. The report states that staff were under pressure to find tactical solutions to waiting times rather than tackle the root causes of the delays. It says that the culture actively discouraged people from accurately recording the facts and prevented full disclosure of waiting times progressing up through the NHS Lothian management chain and governance framework to the board. That is completely unacceptable. There is no place in any part of the NHS for a management culture of this type. The NHS in Scotland has a proud and a unique record of working in partnership with staff, and it is internationally recognised for that. Now, the report does note the view of some staff that recent changes in the structure and attitudes of senior management have resulted in an improvement. However, I want and I need to be assured that any problems of culture in any part of the organisation of NHS Lothian are identified and rooted out. I have therefore instructed the Chair to commission an investigation into the extent of such a culture in NHS Lothian, to identify what the reasons for it are and what needs to be done about it. Now, as members will appreciate, it is important that the outcome of that investigation is not pre-empted, but I have made it very clear that that investigation must include scrutiny of the conduct and behaviour of senior management, and I expect to see the outcome of this work by the end of April. Presiding Officer, it is important to make very clear that these unacceptable practices have now ended in Lothian, and indeed the ending of them has resulted in the surfacing of a significant number of patients who have breached their waiting time guarantees. The board has put arrangements in place to ensure that these patients are treated as quickly as possible. I have sent in an expert Scottish Government team to work with the board in addressing longer-term sustainability issues. I expect the board to work constructively with this team to develop and agree a sustainable operational plan that guarantees that patients will be seen and treated within the legal treatment time guarantees. Since concerns about NHS Lothian came to light, I have also taken steps to assure myself that all other boards are acting in line with the New Ways guidance, and I have received assurances from all chief executives that this is the case. Indeed, members will note from Appendix B of the report that the pattern of retrospective adjustments to waiting times in NHS Lothian is not seen anywhere else in Scotland. However, as an added assurance, I have asked that the rigour of a specific and detailed audit is carried out into local waiting times management and process as part of each board's internal audit programme over 2012-13, and the results of this process will be made public in each board's meeting papers. Presiding Officer, I want to conclude today by making clear my commitment and indeed this government's commitment to lower waiting times and to complete transparency around the reporting of waiting times. The situation in Lothian, serious though it is, should not detract from the efforts of the thousands of NHS staff, including, I should say, the majority of staff in Lothian, who have worked hard and diligently to deliver waiting times in Scotland that are the shortest on record. I want people to have confidence in NHS Lothian and in the NHS in every part of Scotland. Patients expect and they deserve that the rules that we set to ensure speedy access to treatment are complied with, and, Presiding Officer, I intend to make sure that they are.